Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if that little voice telling you are not quite right, or that you are just not focusing properly, is actually a sign of something different, not something wrong? Today we're diving into a really fascinating paper that asks if the idea of neurodiversity, usually talked about with autism, can also apply to ADHD. This new study explores the lived experience of ADHD as neurodivergence. Now, what do we mean by neurodiversity? Think of it like biodiversity, but for brains. Instead of everyone's brain working in one normal way, neurodiversity says there are many different types of brains. And that is okay. People who are neurodivergent, like those with ADHD or autism, experience and interact with the world differently. This paper asks, is ADHD really a disorder that needs fixing? Or is it just a different way of being that our society isn't always set up for? The researchers here looked at how people with ADHD actually experience their lives. They wanted to see if the idea of ADHD as a simple deficit, something to be cured, or as a problem caused by society putting too much pressure on people, actually matches what people with ADHD say themselves. They reviewed lots of interviews with people who have ADHD and found some really interesting things. For example, they generally don't see their ADHD traits as just bad things. Instead, they often feel like the problems come from a mismatch between their brain and the world around them, a world that isn't always built for them. And while the diagnosis can be helpful, it also comes with challenges. You see, there is a growing conversation online and in some academic circles that ADHD isn't just a disorder, but a part of human neurodiversity. This means it is not necessarily a sign of something broken, but a different way of experiencing things that has been sometimes pushed aside. The paper contrasts this with the more traditional medical view, which sees ADHD as a problem to be fixed, and with the idea of overmedicalization, which argues that too many people are being labeled and medicated for things that are really a result of societal issues. The researchers wanted to see which of these ideas best fits what people with ADHD actually report about their lives. The neurodiversity movement started with autistic adults sharing their experiences and advocating for acceptance. It is about recognizing that differences in how our brains work are natural and valuable. It pushes back against the idea that there is only one right way to think, learn, and behave. They argue that many challenges faced by neurodivergent people are actually caused by environments that don't accommodate their differences. Now, what is the medical model? This is the view you probably read about most often. It sees ADHD as a neurobiological disorder, with specific deficits in things like attention, impulse control, and hyperactivity. The goal here is often to reduce these symptoms, often through medication or therapy, so that individuals can meet neurotypical standards. Researchers in this model often focus on objective studies to find biological causes and treatments. Then there is the overmedicalization critique. This view comes from sociology and argues that what we call ADHD is partly a social construct. It suggests that as our society has changed, certain behaviors that were once seen as just part of someone's personality have become medicalized, meaning they are labeled as disorders and treated medically. Critics here point to rising rates of diagnosis and medication use, suggesting that society's demands and a lack of understanding create problems that are then framed as individual deficits. They argue that labeling and medication can cause harm, like stigma and negative identity development, and that we should focus more on changing the environment rather than trying to change the person. The neurodiversity approach to ADHD, as proposed in this paper, tries to blend the insights of the others while centering the experiences of people with ADHD. It suggests that ADHD is a value-neutral neurotype, meaning it is not inherently good or bad, but simply different. It emphasizes that how ADHD traits manifest as challenges or strength heavily depends on the social environment and societal norms. Importantly, it doesn't see ADHD solely as a label or a social construct, but as a set of shared experiences partly rooted in biology and interaction with social norms. A key part of this approach is valuing the first-person perspective of people with ADHD themselves as crucial for producing knowledge. To really get to the heart of this, the researchers looked at qualitative studies, which are basically in-depth interviews with people to understand their personal experiences. They focused on 4 key areas. First, they asked if ADHD characteristics are truly experienced as universal deficits. The medical model often portrays them that way, but the lived experiences paint a different picture. People with ADHD often describe not having a deficit of attention, but a difficulty directing it. They might have an abundance of attention or hyperfocus, on things that interest them intensely. As one young adult with ADHD explained, I think that deficit might not be the right word because I have an abundance of attention at times. It's just that I can't direct it. I don't get to choose what I pay attention to. This hyperfocus can be a superpower, allowing them to produce high-quality work quickly when engaged. However, it can also make it hard to switch tasks or even prioritize basic needs like eating and sleeping. Also, behaviors like hyperactivity and impulsivity weren't always seen as straightforward problems. Instead, they were often linked to intense emotions. Someone described feeling everything so strongly. It's not just anger and sadness, but it's joy and love and all that. 2. I think ADHD kind of intensifies everything, and that's a good thing too. This suggests that terms like intensity might be more fitting than hyperactivity. Second, the paper explored how functional impairments are experienced. While the medical model focuses on individual deficits causing these impairments, people with ADHD often report that the problems arise from a fundamental mismatch between their way of being and the expectations of the neuronormative environment, meaning a society built for neurotypical people. An adolescent described this as, I do it all the time rambling and I never realize, and you can see people look at you like, stop talking. And then I am like, oh right, stop. This constant struggle to meet social expectations can lead to a negative cycle, because society expects certain things like completing tasks regularly, and people with ADHD find this difficult without accommodations. It can create pressure and a feeling of failure. This often leads to feelings of being judged, experiencing rejection from peers, family, and teachers, and developing a hypersensitivity to criticism. Over time, this can result in intense emotional reactions, frustration, anxiety, and what is known as rejection sensitivity dysphoria. As one person shared, continuously trying so hard, and then you feel disappointed in yourself because by trying so hard all the time, sooner or later you get a setback. You can't do your best all the time. And then people tell you are worthless or you are no good. Third, the study looked at the experience of getting an ADHD diagnosis. The overmedicalization critique suggests labels are harmful, leading to stigma. However, the lived experiences showed a more mixed picture. On the one hand, a diagnosis can be incredibly validating. It helps people understand that their struggles aren't due to personal failure but are related to ADHD. This can be life-changing, as one woman put it, as soon as I got the diagnosis, it was just this unbelievable feeling of validation that ID never had before it was life-changing. It helps in forming a coherent identity that includes ADHD. It can also lead to finding supportive communities online and feeling a sense of belonging. For example, a university student mentioned, "There is such a lovely kinship to be felt with people who also have ADHD. We're so similar that it is so nice to be like, this person gets me, and I don't have to explain it." However, there is also a downside. Some people feel broken or like a different person after a diagnosis. They might internalize the idea of being disordered. Worse, they can face stigma from others who dismiss ADHD or react negatively, treating them as if they are psychopaths or something like that. This can lead to feelings of loneliness and invalidate their experiences, as when someone says, "Oh yes, you simply want to belong, don't you?" The diagnosis can be a blessing and a curse, as one study put it. Finally, the paper examined experiences with ADHD medication. The medical model often sees it as a cure, while the overmedicalization critique views it as social control. The lived experiences reveal a complex balancing act. Many people don't see medication as a cure or an oppressive force, but as a necessary tool to navigate a challenging world, to help them focus in school or work, and to manage their behavior according to societal expectations. One young adult stated, "I need this medication. I want this medication and I need it to survive in this world, basically. And if I don't take this medication, this world won't accept me." For many, it is also about achieving personal goals, like improving communication skills or doing well in hobbies. But again, there is ambivalence. While medication can help them function, it can also come with physical and mental side effects. Some feel it suppresses parts of themselves they value, leading to a feeling of not feeling themselves, or that they are only real when off medication. The daily choice to take medication involves weighing its benefits against its costs to their bodies, personalities, and identities. The paper notes that external pressures from clinicians, parents, or teachers can sometimes influence this decision, leaving little agency and reinforcing a negative self-image. So, what does all this mean? The researchers conclude that the neurodiversity approach offers a promising and less stigmatizing way to understand ADHD. It aligns well with the lived experiences of people with ADHD. It validates their feelings of being different without pathologizing them. It frames ADHD not as a universal deficit or purely a social problem, but as a value-neutral neurotype where disability often arises from a mismatch with neuronormative environment. This aligns with the idea that ADHD characteristics aren't always seen as deficits. Hyperfocus, for example, can be a strength, and the intense emotions associated with ADHD can be meaningful. The key takeaway here is that while the overmedicalization critique correctly points to the harmful impact of a judging environment, it sometimes attributes this harm too much to the diagnostic label itself rather than the core mismatch between a neurodivergent person and a neurotypical designed world. The neurodiversity approach offers a more nuanced view on diagnosis and medication than the black and white debates often seen. It acknowledges that the diagnosis can be validating and help build community, while also recognizing the potential for stigma on medication. It moves beyond the cure or oppression dichotomy. It suggests that medication can be a tool to help navigate unaccommodating environments and achieve personal goals, while still valuing the core ADHD identity. This approach emphasizes that both individual and environmental factors are important in addressing disability, and that people can make informed choices about medication without that choice negating their neurodivergent identity. The authors also point out some interesting differences between ADHD and autism when applying the neurodiversity lens. People with ADHD seem more open to considering medication to manage core ADHD traits, even if it is not for a complete cure. They also find that integrating ADHD into one's identity as a value. Neutral trait can be harder because of ongoing societal debates about whether ADHD even truly exists, unlike with autism. This means language, like identity-first language, might be used less often by people with ADHD compared to autistic individuals. Ultimately, this paper argues that embracing a neurodiversity approach to ADHD can lead to better research, clinical care, and societal policies. It encourages more research that is led by people with ADHD themselves and greater involvement of ADHD individuals in how research and treatment are designed. It suggests that clinicians should be more aware of how to support a positive ADHD identity and how medication can fit into a neuroaffirming care model. So, in essence, this research strongly suggests that the neurodiversity approach is a valid, promising, and less stigmatizing alternative for understanding ADHD. It moves away from viewing ADHD as a universal deficit and instead sees it as a different way of being where challenges often arise from the environment. This perspective can empower people with ADHD, help them accept themselves, and ease the complex decisions around medication. It really highlights the importance of listening to the lived experiences of neurodivergent people to shape how we understand and support them. It is a call for a more inclusive and understanding approach to how we view the diverse landscape of human minds. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have ADHD or know someone who does? How does this research resonate with your experiences? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more deep dives into science and psychology, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.